Hello, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Alita.
And I'm Heath. We want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This is a show for them and for people committed to a life rooted in science and free of supernatural beliefs.
Hello, I'm Carl, and in today's show we will be discussing what do atheists worship?
Worship.
Question mark.
But first, we want to tell you a little bit about the sponsors of our show. The Atheist Society of Knoxville frequently has a fun meetup at a bar or eatery. We will be gathering at the West Hills Flats and Taps, 7403 Kingston Pike, around 5:30 p.m. this evening. Look for the silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion standing upright on the table. And, as Matt Dillahunty at the Atheist Experience says, everyone is welcome to our happy hour for food, drink, and conversation. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't.
Our show is also sponsored by the Rationalists of East Tennessee, who have several regular monthly meetings. The first and third Sunday mornings of the month are usually lectures with lively roundtable discussions. The second Sunday is the Skeptics Book Club. More information about all these events may be found at rationalists.org.
Later in the show, we will give you our websites to visit for additional details, including times and locations.
So now, in the news. As we know, this week Hurricane Irma has been in the news.
According to Christian talk show host Rush Limbaugh, Hurricane Irma was a hoax perpetrated by liberals to push their climate change agenda. I don't understand that.
Well, the hurricane was also designed to increase bottled water sales.
I didn't know that. According to Forbes, Rush Limbaugh is safe. And after telling his listeners that the warnings about Hurricane Irma were a scam, he quietly scurried away to higher ground. Apparently, climate change is a liberal hoax so potent that not even Limbaugh could escape its reach.
Oh, poor Limbaugh. Forbes also had to say, quote, "Once a scientific phenomenon begins to invade the world of observation and experience, most will abandon their delusions and embrace a life-preserving reality. Hurricane Irma is only fake news until the torrents begin." Rush Limbaugh may be safe and sound, but the Republican Party has nowhere to hide from this coming storm. 2 decades of short-sighted delusions, from supply-side economics to the Iraq War to climate denial, have piled up a future toll of damage and destruction. End quote from Forbes.
Hurricane Irma also tested the power of prayer for many. In Jacksonville, a town especially hard hit by the hurricane, residents gathered on the beach to pray it away.
Pray it away? Well, according to WJXT News 4 Jax, Jacksonville Mayor Lenny Curry has said it several times. Prepare for the storm, but pray it falls apart.
The Jacksonville Beach Pier was the place where dozens gathered Thursday evening to pray with outstretched hands as this huge hurricane pushes out to sea. News of the gathering spread fast. "We're going to put this storm to sea, no fear," one person in attendance said. What was he going to go see?
Many churches and other groups heeded the code red call for intercessory prayer and protection against Hurricane Irma at the Jacksonville Beach Pier.
And starting at 7 p.m., the gatherers called on God to push Hurricane Irma out to sea.
And the prayers, did the prayers work?
Well, we all know that Jacksonville was hit harder than they thought they were going to be. But interestingly enough, a lot of people after the hurricane have said that without the prayers, it would have been so much worse.
Could have been a Category 6.
Yeah, right. Category 6. They could have, well. But, anytime they talk about, praying things away, and if it works, prayers were answered.
Right, or they don't even stop to think that if it doesn't work, their prayers didn't work, or they're not going to blame God, they're going to blame something else.
Right,
But if it's,
right.
you
Well,
know,
it was meant to happen.
yeah.
Well, it's also that the hurricane didn't go out to sea, but look, God saved me and destroyed my neighbors.
Right, exactly.
So there's always a little thing you can find.
All right, well, let's get on with our program tonight. What do atheists worship? Hello and welcome again to Freethought Forum today, to Freethought Forum TV. Today's show will tackle that question, what do atheists worship?
But before tackling that topic, it's a good idea to spend a few minutes defining some of the terms we will be discussing. Since we'll be talking about worship, that term is a good place to start.
During the program, we'll be discussing the definition of worship, extravagant respect or admiration or devotion to an object of esteem, for example, worship of the dollar. But I was confused at first because I thought it was about atheist worship, and I was going to talk about Enterprise and Star Trek.
Oh, the atheist worship. Oh.
Because there is kind of a esteem, and so.
Well, that's interesting because those prayers, the people who were praying on the beach were wearing, most of them wearing red shirts. So if they had been on the Starship Enterprise, they were on the way out.
They were sacrificial crew.
But, you know, for the definition of worship, you know, what applies, I think, I mean, if you think about the sort of the intent of the question, what do atheists worship? And if we can take worship and kind of unpack it a little bit and say, okay, let's try to apply that to an atheist. Like, no kidding.
Okay.
And there's several definitions for the term worship. And I think the one, you know, so we're looking at definitions from Webster Dictionary.
Okay.
And there's several. A form of religious practice with its creed and ritual. Well, that's not going to work.
Doesn't apply.
Although, when we get to dogma, we can talk about that a little bit. Reverence offered a divine being or supernatural power doesn't apply.
No.
But one of the definitions is extravagant respect or admiration for an object of esteem or a concept. Okay, so that might apply. I mean, I think if you were debating it, you could make a case where that might apply to someone who, let's just say, you know, put the laser beams on a concept like science, or the scientific method, and say it's infallible. Okay, you're kind of stepping over into that territory, right?
Right. Or
it's also not really understanding the scientific method, which is not exactly a method.
And I think we're going to get to that in a bit when we talk some more about some of the other terms. But since our theme for the show also mentions atheists,
that implies we should be talking also talking about atheism, I would think.
So according to the Webster Dictionary, an atheist is a person who does not believe in the existence of God or any gods. So, or one who subscribes or advocates atheism. An alternate definition is a person who believes that God does not exist.
Which is the correct definition as far as I'm concerned.
So, these two definitions phrase it differently, and they are subtly different. You know, the first one says who does not believe, and the second one says who believes. So, you know, one of them is saying there's an absence of belief, and the other one is saying there's a presence of a belief.
And the one with the absence of belief really has to do with being a theist without a theistic worldview. And the other one is more of a positive, that you do believe that there is no God.
Right. So in one case, there's something that should have been there that's missing.
Yeah.
Also, I think not believing, the first definition is often taken to as if not believing in that which exists.
Exactly.
That there is a God, but you just don't believe it.
You just don't believe it. It's like landing on the moon. They don't believe that we landed on the moon.
There is a moon, but they don't believe in it. But anyway, that moves us to atheism. And the definition for that is a lack of belief or a strong disbelief. And that gets into that dichotomy in the existence of a God or any gods. Or a philosophical or religious position characterized by disbelief in the existence of a god or gods. So here again we have that kind of looking at it from two directions.
You're missing something. You've got lack of belief. Or there's something that exists and you choose not to believe in it.
Yeah. Or, yeah.
Okay, well, there are a few more terms that will come up in the discussion. One of them is religion, which is always a tricky one. Some definitions are the service and worship of God or supernatural OR.
Or two.
No, or two. It looks like or is the thing. Okay, commitment or devotion to religious faith or observance, or a personal set of institutionalized system of religious attitudes, beliefs, and practices, or a cause, principle, or system of beliefs held to with ardor and faith.
Ardor and faith. Oh!
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, so, well, the first one, the service and worship of God or the supernatural.
As applicable to an atheist doesn't apply.
Right.
By definition.
Right.
Right.
And some people say that atheism is religion, so we have to
can
kind
talk about that, yeah.
Yeah, because the second one says a commitment or devotion to religious faith or observance. So if as claimed by some, atheism is a religion, that one would apply, but I believe we can show it won't.
And also some people say you have to have faith to be an atheist. You have to have faith that what you think is true.
Yep.
Yeah,
So,
I guess we should have put faith in our list of
I think we
definitions.
should
We
have.
need to talk about the definition of faith here in a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think faith is the key difference, really.
Yes, I agree.
Also, in some languages, apparently, there are different words. Faith has multiple meanings in English. A lot of times it means just, as Twain said, believing what ain't necessarily so.
Believing what, ain't necessarily so, yeah.
It means confidence in. And that's often used in manipulating arguments, trying to manipulate people and switching definitions.
Right, they start with faith meaning one thing and switch it out to mean something else.
And some people will sort of mix faith and hope.
Yeah.
So you can have hope. I mean, and it doesn't necessarily require faith.
Yeah, if I have faith in my doctor, I still don't worship him.
Or confidence is another way to think about faith. You know, I've faith that the sun will come up tomorrow. I mean, it might not, but
it's a possibility.
I have
it can explode.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't, you have to face the consequences. Sorry. Just couldn't resist that.
So, with the definition of religion, if you take that and bring it on, focus on atheism. So, this last definition here, a cause, principle, or system of beliefs held to with ardor. Okay, so let's take that. If you take that in that lens and put it on atheism. Okay, cause, principle, or system of beliefs. You might be able to make an argument. Maybe. I don't think it would be very strong.
I don't think it would for several reasons. One, atheism itself is just a conclusion. So it's not a cause.
Right.
You can have causes related to atheism. It's not really what I call a principle, but that's a little flake here. And the system of beliefs, that doesn't apply to atheism at all, as far as I can see.
No. And I saw a post on the internet, I think it was actually on Fox News, and it was in reply to, it was an article about the hurricane. And there were some people on there that were atheists, and they were talking about some of the content in the article. And one of the persons says, well, atheism is a religion because the government says so. So because they're nonprofits registered under, the 501 laws, and it had to be a religious institution because the government says so. So now it's a religion.
Well,
okay.
Yeah, well, that's the one. The government can't really define religion. I mean,
they kind of painted themselves into a corner.
But also, that again, it's almost like the two definitions of faith issue, in that one's a legal tax position, the other one has to do with actual usage.
Sure.
Oh, you mean
absolutely.
Religion? Or,
Yeah.
And an analogy that I've always liked is that atheism is a religion like bald is a hair color.
Clear.
Nice. Nice. We'll also be bringing science into the discussion. And science, so for the definition of science, here's one: a state of knowing, knowledge as distinguished from ignorance or from misunderstanding. 2, a department of systemized knowledge as a body of study, the science of theology. I think that's an interesting example right there, the science of theology. Knowledge or system of knowledge covering general truths or the operation of general laws, especially as obtained and tested through scientific method. So we're going to spend a little time talking about the scientific method because it's kind of important here. And then a system or method of reconciling practical ends with scientific laws. Okay. All right. So,
yeah. So this body of knowledge, systemized knowledge, is...
What the system and method.
Right, the scientific method. So we do need to... we haven't really looked at the scientific method as a definition, but it is a process that we need to discuss.
right. And so generally speaking, just broad strokes here, scientific method is a process. Okay, it's like you observe something, key observe. You observe something,
Can't just...
invent it. Right. I mean, I guess you could dream up something, and then you create a hypothesis.
Yeah, thought experiment.
Yeah, exactly. Thought experiment. Create a hypothesis, and then propose experiments to test the hypothesis, and then you execute the experiments and collect data.
Data.
Very
Very important.
observation. And then you take those data and you compare that to your hypothesis and see if they agree. And if they do, hypothesis is confirmed. If they don't, it's not confirmed.
Right.
And then you iterate.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the keys too, that the general concept of scientific method is way too simplistic. It's a much more iterative process, a lot of back and forth checking, and dependent on technology to actually verify a lot of things. So it's a very good process because it does a lot of feedback and evolves over time, which is one of the things that religions don't care for.
Right.
But they do. But I mean,
They
they
do
don't
evolve.
care for it yet, but the religions do evolve.
They evolve, but they tend to see more a truth with a capital T as something that is given and does not change.
Right.
That, once you have the truth,
Right.
you don't try to investigate it.
Like the
any
model
further.
of Bryant College is Christ above all. And so it's they've said they'll say some made a lot that everything else overrides it. So if you have evidence, it's got to be wrong because it doesn't fit our view of the world.
Exactly. So you make it an observation, and if that observation doesn't fit with the hypothesis, the observation must be wrong.
Right.
That's kind of reversed.
Right, in a religious
Yes.
view.
Exactly.
Whereas in a scientific view, or using the scientific method, if those observations don't fit with the hypothesis,
You investigate
then
the hypothesis.
the hypothesis, that may have a
Right.
an
Of course,
issue,
like you were kind of alluding to before, religions are immersed in the real world, and they do end up changing, like the concept of slavery, which is kind of ignored now by the literalists, and not all of them now. So that process of changing is kind of interesting.
evolution.
Yes, evolution. They do evolve.
Because whenever someone says, no, that's the Old Testament, it's just the New Testament I'm interested in,
Right.
it's such an absurd concept
Right.
that you can really separate those two, because the whole New Testament makes no sense without the original sin of the Old Testament.
Right. Right. And then I was having a
It
discussion.
really makes no sense anyway, but I'm
No,
sorry.
right. But I was having a discussion with someone, and they asked the question, is the Bible evidence of anything? Okay. And so several people at the table said, well, no, there's no evidence there. It's not totally true, because there are historical facts in there, right? But the book itself, the Bible itself, is not evidence. They're saying it's not evidence of anything. God doesn't, it's not evidence of God. And another person said, well, no, that's not necessarily true. Look at it. It's evidence that the religion has changed.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's evidence of the evolution of
Right.
the religion.
It's evidence of how people thought.
Exactly.
It shows culture, evidence of different ways that people approached dealing with reality.
Mm-hmm.
In those senses, yeah, it's an evidence.
Are we using the scientific method to investigate the Bible?
I think so.
Oh, dear. Heath, I
We have a
think
phone
it's...
call.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'll let you take care of that.
I can push the on button.
Are you there?
Yes.
Hello, caller. Is there a name you'd like us to use?
Yeah, Doug's all right. That's my name.
Is it Doug?
Yeah, do y'all have an agenda? I mean, what is your agenda when you come on TV?
We try to clear up some ideas that may have some misconceptions. It's one of our agendas.
Yeah, we'd like to enlighten people. Tell them the good news.
I kind of feel like that you are trying to tell us how smart you are and how damn we are. But do y'all do get involved in anything like jobs, anything for the city, anything for the county? Do y'all get involved? What do y'all do?
We do lots of things, but...
Wait, let me clarify the question. Are you talking about, like, service to the community? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like, I mean, do y'all do anything? Do y'all... And, like churches, they feed people, they do things, they get involved. And, I mean, do y'all do anything? Do y'all have any causes? I mean, other than the...
Yeah, we've actually been involved in providing clothing and some food for the homeless.
We also do trash pickup on Pellissippi Parkway. That may not seem like a big thing to you, but...
There's some big there's a major secular group that collects donations for situations like the hurricanes and tries to raise funds for that. There are also secular, well, it would be more of an official thing, but there are also secular groups for sobriety, like the AA, but...
Promote literacy, provide books, help people learn how to read.
And
What are some of the things you're involved in?
Well, I'm not really involved in anything. I'm 70 years old, and it's hard to get too involved when you're 70 years old. So I do like to see the city grow. I like to see jobs. I like to see investment. I like to see people's lives improved, and that sort of thing. Their payroll, their ability to work. We got the lowest unemployment rate now we've had in a long time. Anybody who wants a job can pretty much get one if you can walk and talk. And
not always quality jobs, but yes.
That's true. I mean, people just begging you to work, and things are pretty good right now as far as the economy goes. We need to get our wages up and our people in a better position. But tell me what your agenda is, what you want to do to see this city grow and become, a vibrant place.
Well, one of the things that Heath touched on is promoting literacy, and I think
He said he just wanted to hear what he said.
Oh, okay. Well, along with that would be promoting reason, critical thinking, being able to investigate ideas and get a better handle on what is true and what is not.
Yeah, a big part of things like jobs and improving people's lives are connected to things like science and reason. When you say, well, churches go out and help people, but they haven't really invented the technologies and the engineering and the whole basis of dealing with the world to improve lives medically and work-wise tremendously over the years. Yes.
Also, one of the things we're talking about in today's discussion is talking about the definitions of some ideas and what is atheism, and what are some of the things that lead into atheism. And we were just discussing science and the scientific method. This is all wrapped around a way of thinking, which is critical thinking. And part of our agenda, if there is one, is to sort of share that idea of, if you're thinking about something and you need to make a decision, try to make it objectively based on facts and observation and reason, not because someone told you that it's the right way to think. You're thinking for yourself.
I think a key, too, is that saying we have an agenda is not understanding the actual concept behind atheists. They're atheists of every kind of belief.
That's right.
So there isn't really an atheist agenda. They're individual agendas, they're group agendas formed by atheists from different beliefs. As far as sort of the moral position, the one I prefer, and many, many atheists do, is the secular humanist position, which basically has the same sort of value system as liberal Christianity. It's just that our sources for morality, we say, come from different sources.
And it looks like we have another
phone call.
Another phone call. Hello, caller. Are you there?
Yes, this is Charles from Central Illinois.
Can you? Sorry, we're having a hard time hearing you. We're going to turn it up a little bit.
Okay.
There we go.
This is Charles from Central Illinois.
Oh, hello, Charles.
Yes, the concept of what do atheists worship is, the very concept of worship is interesting. Did you deal with the fact that several human beings were deified?
No, we haven't touched on that yet. We haven't even gotten through our terms that we're defining.
Well, let's see. Probably the most famous one is how Julius Caesar was declared Julius Deus by the Roman Senate, erected a temple, and said that it was proper for good Roman citizens to make donations and offerings and so forth at the temple.
And go ahead.
And was particularly pleased his successor, Octavius, otherwise known as Caesar Augustus, since he was one of the principal sponsors of the whole thing.
Self-perpetrating, right?
Yes.
Of course, you had all the medieval kings who were supposedly with God, basically, should be treated.
That's right.
Yeah.
The king was a god.
Right.
He had divine authority.
Not to mention the
divine. Well, he wasn't, quote, a god, unquote, but he had God's specific special blessing. James the First and Sixth of Scotland, who authorized the translation of the King James version of the Bible, was addressed as your divine radiance.
Yeah.
That's pretty up there.
Yeah. So that, but of course atheists don't worship those people who have been deified either. So,
right.
Do you have any other comments, Charles?
But the concept of what is and isn't divine is awful flexible in a lot of people.
Yes.
You can have a lot of cult of personalities running around the United States right now. One of the biggest is for our President of the United States at the moment.
Yeah. And I don't think we're going to have time to discuss that in tonight's program.
That could be its own program.
It could. We could make that a separate program.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing, though, that there's still people who believe that political leaders are the agents of God in the hands of God in this age. But Yep.
I think in some cases they kind of have to rationalize their decision to vote for them.
Mm-hmm.
Because,
Yes.
Because, I mean,
who's more like Jesus than Trump?
but yeah, I mean, it's sort of crazy to think back to last year and the conservatives, who are mostly religious, piling on to vote for President Trump. And they're even amongst themselves are like, I don't want to do this, but he's on the Republican ticket. It's like, okay, all right.
But he has tremendous support from the evangelicals.
Yeah. Well, is it all right with you, Charles, if we go on with the rest of the program now?
Yes.
Okay, well, thank you for calling.
That actually brings up something I wanted to mention. There's a professor, a British professor, young woman named Francesca Stravakopoulou, I think it is. She's have you ever seen her speak? She's very attractive, very sociable, just a person you can't help disliking because she's just so friendly and cheerful. But she's an atheist and a theologian. She studies.
Oh, right.
Very interesting story in itself. But related to what we're talking about, one of the comments under one of the YouTube videos was a person that said, "I've been an atheist all my life and don't believe in God or gods. When I look and listen to Professor Francesca, I know what a real goddess should look like." That's about as close, I think, as
That's funny. Well, we go back to worship, and it's admiring an object of, I can't think of what the word is.
We could go back and check it.
What was it?
esteem.
Object of
Yeah,
esteem.
esteem, right.
So, I mean, a person can be an object of esteem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, Dawkins, I think maybe some people Hitchens were a little bit at times.
So, yeah, when we get to dogma, I'd like to kind of circle back those wagons around and talk about that a little bit.
And there's also, though, I think, a lot of sports people, movie stars.
Boy, we could do a whole show on that. Right. But we have touched on reason
Also
times.
beer.
And so that's one of those terms I think that we need to kind of tease apart. So for our purposes tonight, reason is, 1, the power of comprehending, inferring, or thinking, especially in orderly, rational ways, intelligence. Or 2, proper exercise of the mind. Or 3, sanity. Or 4, the sum of the intellectual powers.
Yes, we also need to define dogma, too. It's a principle or set of principles laid down by an authority. It's incontrovertibly true.
And we have a caller.
It's caller night.
Yes, it is. Are you there, caller?
Yes.
Do you have a name you'd like us to use?
Caller is just fine.
Caller, okay. Hello, caller.
Hi. I was calling in reference to your first caller there, the fellow that asked about your atheist agenda.
Okay.
And well, it was I believe a forthcoming answer. The atheists there have the highway pickup and blood drives and collecting money for different charities.
Mm-hmm.
And those are all very nice things, but I think he was more directed at what does the atheist do that might be a little special, because secular groups do all of those things. I mean, that's not particular.
You mean religious groups do those things?
Religious groups do those things,
Mm-hmm.
like blood drives,
Right.
and highway pickups.
Right.
Yeah, they do, don't they?
Yes.
And collecting money for the poor, things like that.
Although Rational East Tennessee is one of the best trash pickup records in the area. But go ahead.
So just to sort of touch on the general question of what is the atheist agenda, I think the only answer is there isn't one. Because if you look at the definition of an atheist, you're defining someone. It's a very broad definition, and so you can't take a definition like what is an atheist and point it at a whole group of people and assume they have an agenda. That's impossible.
It's not a monolithic.
That's right. That would be like saying, what are vegetarians' agenda?
Yeah, it's broad in terms of it covers a lot of people.
Yeah, exactly. So
Right.
there is no no central group of atheists have put together an agenda to,
we have no pope.
Yeah, right. There is no pope.
We have no Billy Graham.
Yeah, mostly because it's a very, very broad term,
maybe.
and it's not a single group of people.
Did you have a quick point you wanted to make?
Well, I thought that as being an atheist educational group or anything like that, you might be educating people to the fact that you was talking about science and about how religion apparently has very little to do with science.
I think we might get there if we have enough time.
Right. And so to directly address your question, rather than saying do atheists, I think what you would have to say is what do these individual organizations do, like ASK and RET and
whose members are primarily atheists.
Right. Exactly. So those would be the organizations, not necessarily atheists in general. And each of those organizations do have reasons for existence.
It'd be like saying,
well, perhaps I have a suggestion that might help. Maybe you could make it part of your agenda to expose some of these false religions as nothing but hucksters bleeding money out of poor and ignorant people.
there are definitely some of those.
I mean, that would be a worthy agenda.
Right.
For example, these guys that are on TV, Tilton, Osteen, and that bearded guy that comes on at 2 o'clock in the morning. All of these people are preaching the prosperity idea, which is you send me money and God will give you money. As a matter of fact, it's so prevalent that I've heard people say that, of course, Mr. Trump must be godlike or be a godly person because he's so rich.
He's a billionaire. Yeah, exactly.
We're going to have
if you're going to choose any sort of agenda, and if you might, at least consider my suggestion, maybe take it upon yourselves to, as James Randi has done in the past, expose some of these people who are low-down gutter sluts.
And we're going to have to stop there because it's time for us to take a break. So thank you for calling.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. So, in case you are just tuning in, this is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. Freethought Forum is funded jointly by them and by individual contributions. Shows are live most every Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern on Knoxville Community Access Television Channel 12? Or Channel 194, depending on your local cable network. Tell your out-of-town friends to see us streaming online at ctvknox.org.
This is a call-in show, and we're live today,
Obviously.
September 12th. Yeah, we've had several great calls, actually.
We have.
And viewers can call in now to the number on the screen with a short comment or question. Call in now while we go to an informative break.
Do you find stories of talking snakes laughable? Do you prefer the scientific method over supernatural beliefs? Are you concerned about religious leaders and organizations imposing their values and rules on your body, your family, and the rest of our society? Well, take comfort in the fact that you're not alone. The Rationalists of East Tennessee meets weekly for fellowship and provides a forum for people who support skeptical thinking and rational discussion of these and other issues. To find out more information or to find out about our next meeting, visit us on the web at www.rationalist.org. If you live in or around the Knoxville area and are questioning your religious beliefs or simply believe in one less God than everyone else, well, you're not alone. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun and friendly group of people just like you that meets twice a week at a bar or restaurant. We meet every Tuesday night following the show at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria for happy hour. You'll find our group either inside or on the patio. Look for Richard Dawkins' silver-jacketed book, The God Delusion, standing upright on the table. On Fridays, we meet at Agave Azul or the Beard and Beer Market. But if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't. We all question what we believe at one point in our lives. If this is the time for you, come join us for food, drink, conversation, and fun.
The Atheist Society of Knoxville, or ASK, has regular meetups, including evening meetups for fun, food, drink, and conversation. ASK's purpose is to supply a venue for community, camaraderie, and outreach to atheists, agnostics, freethinkers, and other like-minded persons in the East Tennessee area. Our Tuesday meeting is going on now at the West Hills Flats and Taps, 7403 Kingston Pike.
The Rationalists of East Tennessee has Sunday activities involving lively presentations and discussions on subjects topical and timeless. Once a month we get together for a book club. The title of the October book is Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Animals Are? By Franz de Waal. Sunday, October 8th, 2 p.m., Books A Million on Kingston Pike. The public is invited to participate. You don't have to read the book to attend, but of course it would help. Visit rationalist.org to find the rest of the calendar of books and join us at Books A Million, 8513 Kingston Pike, Knoxville, Tennessee, every second Sunday, 2 p.m.
Both the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee help provide a social outlet where you can find that if you don't believe in Zeus, Zoroaster, or Yahweh, you are
not alone.
Okay.
All right.
So,
Where are we?
actually, you know what? We didn't talk about dogma.
No, we didn't. Wait, just Carl just really briefly gave the definition before the break, or before the last caller.
Okay. So
beware of dogma.
beware of dogma. Right. So the problem with dogma, by definition, is that it is true, and that's it.
Right.
No arguments, ifs, ands, or buts. It's just true, regardless of what you observe, regardless of the evidence. If you try to apply any sort of rational thought or the scientific method on it, it's just going to bounce right off.
Right.
Okay.
It's etched in stone or in
pieces of
titanium or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. I don't really know that I need to remind viewers that they're watching this live and can call in the number if they want to, because we're running out of time and we've had a lot of calls. But anyway.
So, just briefly talking about dogma, let's take the lens of what we're discussing and, take atheism and look at dogma.
Okay.
Okay, and is there an atheist dogma? Okay, so it kind of sort of fits in with the question we just said earlier. What is your agenda? Mm-hmm. Not really, but kind of, sort of.
A little.
Okay, so we don't have a Bible, right?
Right. We don't
No
have any
atheist
kind
Bible.
no kind of sacred book.
Right.
There's not the book that all atheists have read and believe.
However, if you were to show up at Flats and Taps today and start talking to us at the table, you're going to see a book sitting in the middle of the table, silver-jacketed copy of The God Delusion. That is one of several books. If you were a new atheist, if you said, hey, I'd like to read something to sort of get an idea of what's going on, people are going to rattle off like 4 or 5 books that most of us have read. And some examples are The God Delusion, Letter to a Christian Nation, God is Not Great, Losing Faith in Faith. So those, there's these folks that people call the Four Horsemen, and those are from books written by them. Even though I would say there's a good chance that a lot of us have read these books because we're just interested, right? At least one of them. That's not dogma. I mean, I think if you were to read The God Delusion and ask Dawkins himself, is this perfect? He would say no. Right.
Or he may have changed his mind about some of the things that he wrote about.
That's right.
I'm not saying he did. I'm just saying that possibility is there.
I'm sure any thinking person evolves in their conclusions with new evidence. That's the whole scientific method kind of approach. There's a possibility of dogmatic atheists, though. I mean, you could have someone, and there are 2 different ways to look at that. You could have someone who is just sort of ranting and not listening kind of dogmatism, or you could have someone who really just pulled it out of the air and doesn't have any justification in his own mind, even though there is justification, we would say. So, but that's pretty rare.
Right. And also I think that you may not necessarily have a dogma, but you may be so convinced that you are right that it may be practically dogma.
Right. Or if if you're dogmatic in the fact that you don't even want to listen to other arguments.
You won't even consider it.
It's just like, I don't want to hear the arguments. I
Right.
believe what I believe, and that's it.
Right.
But I think one of the keys is that people tend to be dogmatic, really narrow their sources. And atheists in general have a really broad range of sources, tend to be well-versed in religions, especially in the West, Christianity, or the United States. So it's not, I'm often shocked, well, always shocked when Christians will come along and say, well, here, read this book. Like, you never heard of Christianity before. I'll give you a quote. Like, we spend our entire lives in the United States and we don't know anything about Christianity.
Right.
Or many of us even raised as Christians, so
Right.
we know from the inside what that
Which is the vast majority.
yeah.
That's right. Okay.
So
And also, look at it from another perspective. You have a lot of Christians who aren't really dogmatic, the more liberal Christians. Matter of fact, a lot of them tend to be more unaware that they're more deists than anything else.
Right.
And kind of working that sort of cultural Christianity rather than the real deep fundamentalist kind of dogmatic Christianity.
Right.
And we're a lot closer to them and many, many things.
Right.
all right.
Well, some people like to say that atheists have faith in or worship science.
Well, there's that term faith and that term worship. I think using the term we have confidence in science would be a better term than saying we have faith in it, because we just don't blindly follow science. Science can be flawed at times.
Well, it is. I mean, it has been historically
and
very flawed.
I think flawed is the wrong word. I think science is incomplete rather than flawed.
Or mistaken.
There can be errors.
There can be mistaken conclusions within
But those
science.
are generally just mistaken in that it's a too narrow a view, or there's enough evidence collected to know, which you never do for sure.
Right.
So that body of knowledge of science and that scientific method is not, we may hold it in high esteem,
Right.
and I think most of us do,
Right.
but not to the point where we worship. Science is not a static thing.
Right. It changes every day.
Right.
Well, it's
so,
not actually a thing, and you tend to worship things,
yeah.
or things that are reified in that sense.
Well, it is a body of knowledge. I mean, if you were, let's equate the sum of human scientific knowledge to the Bible. Okay, they're both buckets of knowledge. Okay, so I guess Christians don't necessarily worship the Bible. They do. I mean, it's an object.
It's a false idol.
Yeah, there you go. It would be a false idol, right? So maybe that but I mean, so worshiping science, no, I don't think so. I think if you were to corner us and say, do you worship science, it would I wouldn't agree.
You'd get a strange look. You don't
You get a strange look.
Right.
Human intellect, I don't know that we would say we worship human intellect.
I think respect is respect or stand in awe of would be more the closest thing we come to.
Right.
Like just the NASA video on the James Webb Space Telescope.
yes, that was
just
amazing.
The technology in that,
yes.
what we're trying to achieve,
Right.
it's just
It's
awe-inspiring what can be done.
Oh yes. I mean that feels like magic. You watch that, it's like wow.
But the other thing that I find disconcerting is that people will say, well, you're an atheist, you don't believe in anything. And well, of course we believe in loving other people, we believe in family. We have all sorts of beliefs, but
Right.
it's not the same as having a faith in something
No.
that doesn't have the evidence to back it up that we
That's
would have.
I'm going to look up a word real quick. Go ahead.
Okay, well, yeah.
So one of the books, speaking of going back to dogma a little bit, and books that we read, there's a book called A Manual for Creating Atheists by, I'm going to mess up his name, Paul Boghossian, I believe is his name. And he calls himself a street epistemologist.
I've heard that term.
Okay, where epistemology is the study of knowledge and why we know things. And he has an argument that says that the true issue with religion or religious thought is faith. Because faith is pretending you know something that you don't know.
Right.
Right? So you got this pretend. I mean, if you knew it, you wouldn't require faith.
Blind
Right.
acceptance.
Right? So here's this faith thing, and it's pretend. And therein lies the problem. So whenever you're talking to someone about religion and why they know that there's a God, you know, so the epistemology is sort of questioning, how do you know that? Let's kind of, and then you start getting the Socratic dialogue.
Yeah.
Let's start, you know, why do you think that? Why do you think that? And let's discuss this and sort of pick it apart and get to the root of it.
And related to that, I think almost every case when I've talked to someone who's become an atheist, you know, wasn't born in a family with atheists and sort of became atheists.
Worked their way out of religion.
It's almost always that they've started asking questions.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And a second reason
It
is
wasn't
that,
because they had some traumatic experience
or God failed them in some way, or that they hate God. That's another thing that people
that was
say about
the God is
atheists.
Dead, Not Dead movie. That was based on that idea.
But the other thing, the other way that people find themselves growing into the atheistic viewpoint is that they read the Bible carefully, or critically, questioningly, and it doesn't add up.
Right.
And it also shows a tremendous amount of patience on a person's part to be able to
Yeah, that's right. So, sort of to go back to the original premise of this show is, what do atheists worship? I think we have to say, well, because the definition of atheism, or an atheist, is so broad, we have to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there's three of us right here, and we all think different things. So, you know, I may worship, which I don't think I do, something, and the two of you would be thinking completely different. So the issue number one is we're all not the same. It's a very broad term. And number two is, you know, just from if you just look at the definition of, okay, we're all three atheists, is there a common dogma? Well, no.
There's a common conclusion is all you can say.
We're going to have to wrap it up, though.
Okay.
So it is time to wrap things up, so get out your pen and paper. This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Alita.
And I'm Heath. Please send us feedback. Leave voicemail at 865-272-9060 or email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
Here you go, Carl.
Right, mine just popped up, but I'll
Okay.
use yours. You can see the show on Tuesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on this Knoxville station at 2100 Greenwich Mean Time at ctvknox.org.
We would like to thank our viewers and send our thanks to Sam and Riv for technical support, to the staff of CTV NOX, and to all of our callers.
All of our many callers.
Yeah, it's great.
And nuns, those who identify with no religion, are the fastest growing religious group in America. Right here in East Tennessee, the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee are places you can find fellowship and fun. And always remember that
You are
you are not
alone.
alone. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.
And we're fading away. Thanks for watching.
That was fun.
That was fun.